Hi, welcome to this tutorial on a synthesis recipe. It's another synthesis recipe. Today we're tackling a chordal pad, kind of organ soundy, really lovely pad sound that we can get on a Supercollider. And again, we're following things that already been done. In this case, the pulse width modulation, the Thor. It's part of what is it? Propeller head. What is that? Reactor or something like that. Anyways, that's the propeller head's Thor. A great modular synth, and it's Gordon Reed, who's just a great writer, and he gives a bunch of good tutorials, loads of them online for you to check out. But he does a number of these for the Thor. So let's dig in. And an interesting approach or interesting technique in just general in subtractive synthesis is the pulse width modulation. So basically, I'll let you go ahead and read the theory on your own. It's all here. Just go to this tutorial. But basically, you have a pulse wave, which is kind of on off, and by modulating the duty cycle, basically by modulating the amount of time it's on and off. Here it's off more and on less. Here it modulates. So basically, you're modulating it using a kind of LFO. So you're changing the sound, and you'll recognize it right away. It's the bass lines and such like that. So let's get started with what with the actual synthesis here. Let's jump into Supercollider and start up the synth, and we're going to call this pad and dot add. Okay, let's just get that going and see what he's looking for. So let's see. There's no need to filter envelope. We're going to use amp sustain the minimum square shape for the sound, and you're done. Okay. Okay, so he's creating just a basic. Let me just see. I guess what we're starting with is oscillator here. It's a pulse wave, and it's duty cycle 24, which is about 20%. Okay, and he's got some really low frequency things. So let's go ahead and do that. We have some arcs. We'll have some arcs, some vars. What did I do wrong here? I feel like it's not indenting properly. Okay, arcs and variables. I'm just gonna look at my cheat sheet real quick, and right. Okay, and he says set a basic envelope. Yeah, let's go take care of some of this sort of some of this tidy up work. Okay, so let's make a let's just create a real basic envelope equals env.gen.ar, and we're just going to have env.asr. Okay, just the I think he just has a basics like a square shape kind of thing. So basically, yes, we have ATK. Well, let's keep that sustain level 1 REL and a CRV. Okay, and if this is new to you, and a gate, check out some earlier tutorials where we talk more extensively envelopes. And these are our envelope arguments. ATK, we'll just set that default to just like your basic square shapes. And an REL of same thing, just a quick release. 10 milliseconds, that's really short, but it just doesn't clip, I guess. And a CRV, we'll just make that equal to 0. No curve for now. And then a gate, so we can re-trigger it, and we'll just initially start it off as 1. Okay, and then our first oscillator, oscillator 1 will be equal to pulse dot AR. I believe I use pulse. Is there neater ones, nicer ones? No, just pulse. Okay, some analog ones. Okay, now you notice there's the pulse, and then there's the width. Okay, there's a frequency, I'm sorry, and then the pulse width, and then we don't worry about multiply. But let's have a look at the help file real quick. The pulse width is 0 to 1. Okay, so that's what they're calling that duty cycle. Okay, so about 20% will be 0.2. So anyways, we'll put a freak, and we'll have PW for pulse width. Okay, and I think we're gonna have several of these. So we're gonna have pulse width 1, and we have freak 1. Okay, and do just like we've done in previous synth recipes, just create several of these, and we'll again create that pitch situation where we're using MIDI pitches, and then we're converting them later to hertz. Okay, and we'll have a freak 1, and then a PW1 here, and that will be equal to 0.2. They said 24%, 20%, 20%. Okay, that's it. Okay, and well, it's pretty low pitch, so let's bring that down. Let's do like 48, something like that, initially. And right, freak 1, pulse width 1. So freak 1 now, we have to establish that will be equal to the pitch dot MIDI. Okay, and we may wish to detune though as well, so we'll have a tuning setting just like in our previous pad tutorial. So I'll kind of go through this tune. So I'll have tune 1. Forgot what I call them, but that's fine. We'll just equal to 0 for now. And in fact, it's pitch plus tune 1, and then convert that whole thing to a cycles per second or a hertz. Okay, and then that'll be our freak 1. And then let's go ahead and we'll establish a mix anyways, because we're going to mix several oscillators eventually. So we'll say sig, which we need to add to our variables. And we'll have that equal to, mix.ar. So this is where we'll mix our signals eventually. And then that'll be an array of signals. And the first one, OSC1, until we can add some other ones. And then we'll send that signal out. So it will be out.ar 0 sig. And then we're going to times it by the envelope. And we'll have an amp too. Might as well have an amp too. So we can set an overall amplitude. Okay, so let's add an amp argument. And we'll make that equal to 1. Okay. Looking pretty good so far. So let's save that. Let's boot our server. It's been booted. Let's see what that gets us, and let's just see how it sounds. Equal synth, and let's pad. Okay, not bad. Alright, seems like the pitch is much lower. So let's start that and give it a try. Oh, sounds pretty close there. And you see there's quite a bit of richness that comes in just by using that pulse wave. Sounds a little bit mellower, but anyways, we'll get with it as we go on. Okay, so now what we need to do is they say to invoke pulse width modulation. So basically, we need to set a low frequency oscillator. So basically, we're going to change that pulse width, continuously over time, and using an oscillator, using a low frequency oscillator that's going to modulate that pulse width. Okay, so it says we're going to see LFO, and then we're going to do it around 1 hertz. Okay, and so 1.5 hertz, and this keyboard tracking not going to implement necessarily, and modulation depth of around 40. So what does that mean? See if we can figure that out. I think I have a cheat sheet here, so I got to figure out how we actually did this now. Right, so if we have our LFO1 here, and pulse LFO1, right, that's the thing. And then it's being modulated here at low and high at a certain frequency. So the LFO1 low is 0.14 and 0.2. Okay, so it's modulating between, so this is the actual pulse width. So it's modulating 20% pulse width and 0.14 pulse width. I think I tried to check those out and figure those are some interesting settings that seem to work pretty good. Okay, so let's give that a go, and I'll explain to you what's going on there. Okay, so basically, instead of a fixed pulse width here, PW1, which we shouldn't have gone to the trouble to do all that, we're just going to oscillate it, okay, between two pulse widths. So the first thing we need to do is create a low frequency oscillator. So LFO1, okay, and this is going to be LFO1 will be a sine wave, sine os .kr, because it's a control rate. Now its frequency will be, let's see, LF freq. So LF freq 1, 1. Okay, so that'll be how fast it modulates between these two ranges, right? And he says about 1.5 hertz. So we'll go ahead and make that an argument. LFFREQ1 and equals to about 1.5. Okay. Now we need to range that because that sine oscillator is going from -1 to 1. So that means our pulse width will be from -1 to 1. We want it somewhere between 0 and 1, but in fact, we're just going to oscillate it between 0.14 and 14 and 20%. It doesn't seem like very much, but it makes a difference. So we'll put a range here, dot range. So basically, it converts this dot range as a function that converts the natural -1 to 1 range to some other range of your choosing. So that range will then be some arguments that we can change. So it'll be LF1 low and LF1 high. Okay, between these two ranges. All right, and let's go ahead and insert those ranges as an arguments. LF1 low will be equal to 0.14, and LF1 high will be equal to 0.2. Okay, I forgot the equals. Okay, so now this will oscillate between 0.14 and 0.2, and of course you can change that dynamically by using the set, in midstream. So you can play around with how that sounds. But let's have a listen and see what kind of effect it has. But before we do that, we actually have to apply our LFO1. So instead of a fixed pulse width, we're just going to get rid of this altogether. That was just an example. Instead of a fixed pulse width, we're going to go ahead and put that LFO1 there. So that's going to be an oscillating thing between 0.14 and 0.2, continuously changing at that speed, LF freq 1. Okay? And so if we do that, and we send this now, and we listen to it. And so you notice that phasey effect going on, and that's that pulse width modulation. So with a really simple one oscillator and this really interesting technique, we created a real dynamic sound, this chorusy, really kind of rich sound already, just using the one oscillator. So that's great. I like that a lot. All right, now what does he say? So so let's listen to what oh yeah, it's this much lower thing, so we can do that. You can do that. It's a little brighter than his, but oh well. We'll just take this as it comes along. Okay, now. Oh, right. Oh, these are just bass sounds. Okay. Oh, we're getting into the. I'm sorry. I was just in this whole bit, and but actually that does give you an introduction there to the pulse wave. So this ensemble sound is really what we're after. Okay, these rich string pads. Okay, so right. So now he's going to use a modulation matrix of the sound for 2 hertz. Okay, so 2 hertz and oops, what does he do? How is he doing this? Okay. Okay, so there's a Jupiter 8 string sound, a pulse width oscillator with a sawtooth, and producing 3 pitches that are very slightly due for another. Blah blah blah. Okay, so we'll start. Is that where he starts? Yes, he does introduce a second oscillator here, but actually before we all that stuff was still valid. We're keeping that. We're actually doing this example 3 ensemble sound, and we've done this part. We've created a one oscillator. But before we go any further, let me. He uses a special example, and I'll show you how to access that. Okay, so basically, I've put some materials up You'll need to know about patterns. Now, I have in my Versal page, if you go to that link, this full course is there. It's Designing Digital Music and Interactions. You can check that out. I do have some links here to patterns here. Okay, so just to get that chordal sound, you'll want to check out some of these patterns, and all the other synth recipes are up there. But there's a little section here on patterns. Where did they go? Expanding the interface, blah blah blah. Building synth. Maybe it just hasn't loaded in. Right. Well, anyways, it just hasn't loaded here. But actually, they're just basically taken from this Celeste Hutchins. Basically, just so you can check that out to understand how to do patterns in Supercollider. But I'm just going to go ahead, just for our purposes, since we're doing synthesis, I'm just going to grab my pattern that I've made already here, so we can at least follow along a little bit with Gordon Reed. And you can just do that. You can just copy mine if you want. It's fine. So if we go ahead and run that, I think it's still all good. Yeah, it is. Okay, we just have to smooth out the envelope a little bit there. What did I do? So it's attack 0.3, release 0.5, and a curve -2. Attack 0.3, release 0.5, and a curve of -2. Don't forget the space. Okay, so let's go ahead and send that. And then we'll play our pattern again and see how that sounds. Okay, that's a little better. Okay, well, anyways, you get the sense that's pretty close there already. And this again is just with the one oscillator. So let's go ahead and continue on with our. So check that out. Check my Versal page. Did it load again? It didn't load. What happened? All right. Anyways, so let's add our second oscillator. All right. So he says here to add a second oscillator, and he talks about how Jupiter's add a sawtooth wave, but he's going to go ahead and add a second pulse width modulated one with a second LFO2, running at a slightly different rate. And he's going to set a duty cycle to 80% rather than 20 to have a sort of different polarity. And then they're going to detune the one slightly around +6, -6. So I'm guessing that is not 6 semitones. And I think I've already sort of discovered which ones those are. So we'll just cheat and copy from what I played around with. Basically just trial and error, hearing how they sound. Okay, so let's go ahead and just implement at least the second oscillator. So we're going to need, well, we'll just start from here just to make it a little bit more clear. Okay, so we'll go ahead and make an OSC2. Okay, equals pulse.ar. Okay, it's going to have a freak 2, right? And so let me get that stuff. And it's going to be controlled by another low frequency oscillator, LFO2, right? So that means that width modulation will be controlled by another different sine wave. All right, and let's go ahead and add that into the mix. Okay, and if, like the previous tutorial, you want to control that mix independently, you just have some amps. I don't think we're doing that with this one. Doesn't look like I do. Oh, I just manually put those in because I think we're just keeping it the same. But if you wanted a little bit more modular and you wanted to have this to mess around with, you can create some variables that'll change the amplitude mix. All right, so what do we need to do? We need to create the variable here, which is os2, so that Supercollider doesn't complain. What else we did? We have a freak 2 and LFO2, right? So in those things, I think we are just variables as well, because they're calculated to and LFO2. Okay, so let's create the LFO2. We'll just copy the LFO1, and we'll make that LFO2, and it's going to be at a frequency 2, so LF2 low and LF2 high. Okay, And let's make sure we have these arguments in place. So we'll need a tuning, a frequency, low frequency, how quick to oscillate it, and then the low and the high. Okay, so I'm going to copy all that there and just put a comma there and create a new line so we don't get too confused. Oh, there's an extra comma. And let's just change all those to 2. Tune 2, LF freak 2, LF2 low, and LF2 high. Okay, and I'm just going to cheat and see what things I came up with that I thought sounded good. So the LF freak 2 is 2, and I think he does recommend that. So we're going to do 2 times a second. Slightly different from the 1.5 here. And let's see. LF2 high and low, it's 0.74, 0.8. Remember he says he was going to do the opposite polarity. And basically I have it going from 0.142, so 74 to 8. 0.74 to 0.8. Okay, that's the opposite end of the duty cycle. And we're detuning it. All right, so I said 6, so it's actually 1/6 of a, 6/100ths of full tune, a full pitch to give it a real chorusy kind of thing. So, oh right, 6 on either side. So I don't know why I did it that way, but that's fine. Let's do 6 on either side of the pitch. So we'll have a detune 1 here and a detune 6 plus. Okay, so the tune 1 will be negative, remember the space, 0.06. So it's just slightly detuned, just micro detuned slightly from the original pitch, okay? And they're both on either side. So the tune 2 will be positive 0.6, 0.06. Okay. Did they settle everything? And then I have to do a freak here. Let's put the envelope back up here. Let's just move it up here so it's a little bit clearer what's going on. Okay. And if you want to indent everything, you just select all and go to edit, auto indent line or region. All right. Then we have LFO 102, and then we have frequency 1, oscillator 1. And so we'll copy this frequency 1 line because we're going to need to make this exact same conversion here. So we're going to call it frequency 2. And we're going to have pitch and tune 2. Okay, and then that's going to go in the mixes. Okay, I think we're getting there. It sounds pretty good. So let's evaluate that, and let's play our little sequence. Ah, right, it's much more rich, see? Okay, it's still a bit choppy there. Well, it's a dur. All right, what is a dur? Oh dear. All right, because it's a linear thing. Okay. Well, anyways, I'll tell you what. And then there's a done action too. Ooh, interesting. All right, it's got to kill them all. Okay. So yeah, in order to use these patterns, so you can keep it this way. So I would do like a save as. If you want to save it here, this is good if you're going to connect it to a MIDI keyboard or do different things. And there's various tutorials that show you how to make a virtual keyboard and do that. You're going to keep something like this. Okay. So in fact, we'll even just comment that out. But I'm going to make a new envelope, and I'll just copy it over, and then you can just, I'll explain it, and then you can see what's going on. So this way, this envelope now is a linen, which basically means it's just going to keep on for a certain amount of time. It's going to keep a certain duration and sustain that for a certain duration and just let go instead of executing and then releasing, executing, releasing. Okay, and we have attack, sustain, release curve, and then a gate as well. And then this done action 2 just means that it kills the synth altogether when it's done playing it. So that way, when I'm playing through these patterns, it creates a new synth that plays it and it kills it, creates a new synth that plays it, each of these things. And you can look into that in those other tutorials. But you just need this done action 2, otherwise it'll keep all these synths on your server the whole time, and eventually you'll run out of processing power if you do this enough times. Okay, and I believe everything else is in place. So we do that. Oh, it's complaining. Because, why are you complaining? Because there's no sustain. Right, okay, so sustain is the The Dior is not right. Text sustain. The sustain is the duration of the note, actually. And I just made a quick calculation at how long I actually want it, which is going to be fed from the pattern, minus the attack amount. Okay, this 0.3. So you have just a smooth with not too much overlap. Okay, so let's go ahead and implement that. We'll have a sustain variable. Okay, and then it'll actually become sustain will be equal to the Dior minus the attack. Okay, and then we need to create a Dior argument here. Dior is equal to, my initial setting was 3, but that will change over here. The pattern actually sequences the durations, the Dior and the amplitudes there. Okay, so hopefully that works now. I think that's the ticket. Yep. And then that shouldn't sound so choppy now and take up so much processing power. Okay. Now, if you just look down here, you see the server processing power. See, just a quick demonstration. If I just comment that out, leave that commented in, and evaluate that, and just send that pattern again. We'll just keep building it up. See, every new one, it doesn't kill. So just new ones keep coming. It's not too bad, but what we really need it is to kill that every time it plays it. Okay, and that's uniquely for that pattern. You'll use this envelope if you want to control it with some kind of external device. Anyways, yeah, we're getting off the beaten track a little bit. I just want you to focus on the synthesis for this one, and all that other stuff you can fill in as you go along. Look at some of the other videos I have up. All right, so we're getting there. We're getting there. We have 2 oscillators, and it sounds pretty good already. I'm ready to stop, but it can even be nicer, I think. So he's going to steal a trick from the string synthesis 1970s and add another oscillator an octave below the first 2. For this one, I'm going to use duty cycle 50%, modulate it with the same LFO one, the first one. There are many other options which produce slightly different sounds, so you can play around that. Adding the lower octave creates greater depth. Okay, so I'll look at my cheaty one and see that I've created a detune 3. It's a negative, right? Okay, and then, but I don't have another LFO. Okay, so because we're going to use LFO 1. Great. Okay, so what we need to do is we need to create another oscillator. So it will have its own frequency as well. So we'll just copy these 2 lines of freq 2 and the os 2. And we'll call it freq 3. I'm going to shrink this a little bit. I don't think you need it quite that big. You can still see, hopefully. And we're going to create this to tune 3 because it has its own tuning. All right, and then oscillator 3. And it's going to be frequency 3 and LFO 1. We're going to just use the same LFO 1 as he suggests. Okay, now we do need a couple more arguments here. We need a tuning, and we need just a tuning, I think. So we're going to copy that and say we need a tune 3. Tune 3. And as he mentioned, it's an octave below, so negative 12. And we'll keep the 6, so it's that exactly an octave below the first oscillator. All right. Tune 3. It's going to give us our frequency 3, and pop that in there. Now, I think that's it. Yeah, I believe that's it. Okay. And then, again, you can have your own amplitude mix if you want to mix the 3 things. So I'm just going to keep them hard-coded, just a equal mix. So we'll say OSC3. And we're going to times these because they add up to 3, which will just send it clipping. So we're going to times it by 0.333 by 1/3, so it all adds up to 1. And yeah, and then you can change that amp argument to be even quieter if you want, but at least all this will add up to 1 initially. Okay. And what else do we got here? No, I think that's it. Okay, I think we're getting there actually. A couple detours. Oops. All right, I didn't create the variables I needed to create here, so I need a freak 3 and os 3. Okay. And I'm just going to do this parentheses thing so that we don't have to keep highlighting everything. Just simply a little slight time saver above and below. Let's see if that goes. That does. And then play my pattern. Ah, very lovely. Okay. All right. So, and we'll see what his sound. Pretty close. A little more bass in there, I think. Okay. Oh, this is the third one here. Oh, it's very mellow, isn't it? Oh, he adds a low-pass filter, and and then a delay effect to spread it to the stereo field. Okay. So great. So let's do that. So this will be our final step. Let's go and low-pass it. We'll take the signal and just eat that again. And let me just get a sense of how much he low passes it. I'm going to finish by adding low pass some of the high frequency sound. He doesn't really say. I guess I could look at the picture a little bit closer and see what he does. There's a low pass filter, blah blah blah. Filter 3, blah blah blah. Doesn't really say. Kind of hard to see where the low pass. The problem with some of these things, they are a little bit hard to find things. In any case, I believe I did work this out anyway, so you could just follow. Oops, that was for the last one. Okay, follow along anyways. Yeah, so we're going to look at the low pass. And I use this nice DFM one, which is nice. But you can use resonant low pass filter. These DFM ones, you have to have the Supercollider 3 plugins installed. So I'll give you an example of both, but it's the same arguments anyways. Wanted to see how much the frequency, 2500. Okay, so let's do that. So let's do a DFM1. Okay, .ar. And that's just a modeled analog filter. It's really nice sounding. It's kind of a Moogie sounding filter. And we'll have a filter freak. Did it a freak? Yeah. And then we need a. So the source will be the sig. Sorry. Itself, right? We're gonna low pass filter it. We'll have a F freak. And then we have to designate the type because the DFM was a changeable filter. It could be a bandpass. Oh, that's what I did wrong with the other one. All right. So if you've done my previous tutorial, I think on the DFM one you have to change the type. So actually, let's look at the help file. So if you've done my last tutorial, you can go back and change your thing because I think you just need to make sure it's a high pass or low pass. So that's it. Well, I guess it is a high pass filter. Oh, weird. I thought we're doing a bandpass filter. In any case, that seems to work okay. Right, so this is low pass. We're going to do type 0. And it's going to be 0. Okay, so it's just a low pass filter. And let's add those arguments to our argument list. We're just growing rapidly. We'll have filter freak, which is going to be equal to 2500. And then that's it. Yeah. Okay. So filter freak 2500, right? All right. Now, if you don't have those SE3 plugins installed, which you really should do, you can use resonant low pass filter. Low pass filter. And I think it's the same set of arguments except for the type. So RQ, you can have, the resonant quotient and change that a little bit. Okay, so you would just adjust this. I'll leave it blank for now, but you can adjust that or make that an argument. Okay, but it's essentially the same arguments. But I'm going to comment that one out because I like the way the DFM one sounds. And then let's chorus it, not chorus it, but let's use the Haas effect. I think I've talked about this before, but just use a slight delay and send it out to both channels. So you get a nice stereo effect from this. Okay, so we'll just go ahead and eat the signal again. And in this case, we'll we'll have signal 2 actually. So we need to create another signal because we're going to use both of them. And we need to create a variable for that. Sig2. Okay. And so our signal 2 will be the signal, except it's slightly delayed. So the Haas effect, you can look it up, basically uh, um, simulates the sort of delay effect our head has on the way sound travels to each ear, and it's a lot to do with how we locate sound in a stereo field. Yeah, go ahead and look it up and read up on it. But we're going to make that equal to a delay. We'll use a cubic delay. Okay, and then the in will be the signal. Okay, and then the max delay time, we'll just keep that the default 0 2. That's because we're only delay it very little. And I think we delay it by 50 milliseconds. That sounds good. And you can make that a variable, argument if you want. I think the higher the number, the wider the stereo field. So you can think of this thing as this sort of stereo field width. And just play around with that and adjust it. There's a lot of dependencies because there's lots of sort of chorusing and phasing going on with all the pulse width modulation. But you can adjust that and see how you like it and get it to the sound you like, or you can make an argument, and adjust it down here if you want. Okay, so there you go. And now the only thing we have left to do is create an array here. So basically the multi-channel expansion, I think I've talked about this before. I don't want to get too much into it, but basically if I replace this with an array of signals, it'll start at 0, and then however many signals I give it, it'll just continue pushing those out to a different channel. So if it'll start at 0, if I have 2, it'll go 0 and 1. If I have 3, it'll go 0, 1, and 2, etc., etc. Okay. So what I need is an array here. I'll have sig, that's our original signal, plus sig1, sig2. Okay, in an array, and then those can just be all multiplied by the envelope in the app. All right, because those will be mixed. Now I wonder if I have to half those because, oh no, one's going to one channel, one's going to the other channel, so that's fine. That should be fine. Okay, so save that, and I think that's essentially it. Well, let's see how that sounds. Very nice. A little bit mellower, less bright. And then our stereo, which I can't hear right now, but eventually. Okay, and there you have it. There it is, a really nice sounding pad. We followed that, learned some synthesis techniques from Gordon Reed. Really well done tutorial there, and just showed you how to implement that within Supercollider to create this really interesting sound using just not too many resources, a few pulse waves, a couple filters, okay, and some pseudo stereo there going on. And so I hope you are able to follow that along, enjoy it, and understand what everything does. And good luck with that. And if you're wondering what all this mess is about, just go ahead and look into that Celeste Hutchins tutorial or my Versal page, which has just the kind of Reader's Digest version of some of his tutorials there, but essentially just copy and pasted from him. Okay, great. Good luck with that. Hope you enjoyed that.